Hello, one and all, and welcome to the podcast we call the Fantastival with myself, Stephen Spaum, in the podcast where I invite my guests to come on, talk to me all about their musical taste, their memories, their experiences, and I get to collate their fantasy festivals, which I have christened Fantastivals. We are now on episode number 149. We are now in December, and this is the penultimate episode of 2023. And before we get cracking with this week's guest, just want to say a massive thank you to Stephen Brown from the Record Citizens label. He was my last guest. That was a great show, a great man all the way from Canada, doing his record label DIY and putting out some amazing releases at the same time. So a massive thank you to Stephen for coming on. So that was 148, but like I said, 149 tonight. And I'm so happy, delighted to be joined this week by a man of many talents, DJ, presenter, columnist, contributor. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only Rob Fiddaman.
Well, hi Steve, thank you so much for having me on your penultimate end of year episode.
Pleasure is all mine, Rob. I'm really looking forward to chatting about you. But before we do, I always like to check in with my guests, make sure they're doing well. I think mental health is a really important factor. So, Rob, mate, how you doing?
Better. I did not make it public, but I did struggle the last couple of years a little bit, to be honest with you. But I think the Richard Ashcroft music is power. I think music's helped. Not drinking and taking a lot of walking exercise and making sure that you've got time just to go out and get a coffee and have a bit of time to reflect on stuff. So yeah, probably you weren't expecting that, but yeah, I'm good now. I'm all good.
Good to hear, Rob. And like I said, I introduced you as a man of many talents, but tell us a bit about yourself. Who is the man behind Rob Fiddaman? What does he like to do? What are his interests? Tell us about the legend and the myth behind Rob.
Oh, I don't know about legend, but it's quite used quite a lot, isn't it, now these days? But, well, you know, I started collecting music memorabilia when I was quite young. So, obviously I love the Beatles. I think you sort of grow up with the music that your parents are listening to or that kind of thing, music that's in at the time. And, I was sort of saving up for a George Harrison autograph and then started buying the original Beatles film posters, getting into collecting rare records. And then I got into film memorabilia. I decided that I loved the artwork for the Carry On films, collected one. Then I collected a second one and forgot that there was about 34 or 38 Carry On films. And that was great until you find out that you bought a French one by mistake, or there's a rare Mexican one. And before you know it, it just gets out of control. All these posters that you've got for films and music. I mean, I had a bit of a stint in music myself, singing and writing. And, I spent a little bit of time in the States. I put a lot of this memorabilia into storage. And when I came back to the UK around 2008, I decided to put it all in an auction, a music auction. But what did I do? I ended up buying stuff again. So I thought, well, I don't know really what I'm going to do with this. And I had this really crazy thought that really my era was 90s and no one's really buying and selling Britpop memorabilia, or they weren't really back in 2010, around that time. And if you've got a bass guitar that was used by Paul McCartney, it's very difficult to go and ask Paul McCartney if he used it, unless you want to sit outside his office in Soho, MPL, or somebody that knows him. So I thought probably I should stay clear of, although I love the 60s, stay clear of that and go with something that I'm a bit more knowledgeable with. I was there, I wasn't at the Cavern, but I was at Nebworth, so I opened up a little website called Britpop Store, and I just had a few basic sort of signed photos and a few posters on there. And I was selling bits and pieces, and after about 2 or 3 months in 2012, I got a message from Alan McGee, give him a call, and he said, "You're either fucking mad or a genius." He said, "What a great idea this is, the Britpop Store." He said, "Come down to my place in Wales. I've got some stuff that I don't want anymore that I want to donate or, sell for charity." So I met Alan, 2012. And then what kind of happened then was that I think the word got about within that kind of circle, and I sold some stuff for Bonehead. I sold his little scooter. Noel in Italy bought all the band members a little scooter. I can't remember what they're called now, but they're quite retro looking. It's the one where you see them at Earl's Court or sitting on one. Yeah. So I sold Bonehead's one and some other bits and bobs. Then I was contacted quite randomly by Steve White from the Style Council. Yeah. He had a tour poster for Oasis. I think they were supporting Black Crows, or Black Crows supporting them. I can't remember. But at the time, Steve filled in for Alan because he had a bad wrist. And he asked me to sell that poster for his charity that he was working with, which I did. And when he came to see me, he saw some bloody Carry On posters on my wall. And obviously his wife, Sally Lindsay's a massive fan. And so I just unscrewed one and gave him one to give her. I think it was Carry On Behind, I think. But I think she still got it. Then I sold some stuff for Damon Minchella. It's obviously Ocean Colour Scene.
Yeah, Damon Minchella's been a guest on this very podcast. He had some amazing stories to tell and a great fantasy festival lineup, old Damon.
Yeah, I went down to his house and he had the original little Mini Cooper, but they all had one. Do you know when they did the voiceover? I think Kate Boss did it, and it was a bit like an Italian job, 100 Mile High, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I should have bought it, really. I should have bought it, but there's just so much stuff, isn't there? You know, you can only have so much stuff. And he saved the Mini for his daughter to go to university when she was older, but she didn't want it. So I handled that sale. I bought a guitar off him. And then Steve put his brother Alan White in touch with me, and that was really such a phenomenal day. It really should have been on one of these like TV shows, you know, because I went to his storage unit at the Music Bank in London, just over the Thames, and it was where he'd stored everything when he left Oasis, and it was around about 10 years, and he hadn't been there since. And it was just incredible. The unit next door, they're like cages. You could see through everything, just like little cages. Amy Winehouse's one was next door. So I saw a little black tie tied around the padlock. And I was like, what's that? And there was a case with Amy Winehouse sprayed on it. And then I just saw this big throne. And I was like, oh, I can't believe this. And it was like everything from Back to Black. Everything was in, bits and bobs were in there. And of course, I saw like a pearl red drum kit, which was the Be Here Now one. It wasn't complete, but the bass was there and a few snares and bits and bobs. So I bought that. And then it was really funny, actually, because there was a drum case on the floor, and Alan opened it up, and there must have been about 50 tambourines in there. And I was like, are these Liam's? And he went, yeah. And he said what it was, like, the roadie were going for Noel, and like people were going in with like the drums for Alan and this, that. And Liam was like, where's my fucking, where's my roadie, So what they did was they bought 50 tambourines. I don't think this is known anywhere actually, but they bought 50 tambourines and put them in a case, and somebody brought them in for him.
Amazing.
And like my eyes were like falling everywhere looking at them. So Alan's like, look, just take one for coming down, helping me and meeting you and stuff. So he gave me one. It was, I don't know, like, there's no specific photograph I would be able to find because they were from the Don't Believe the Truth tour, which would have been Alan's last one. And some were used in practice, some were used on stage. I mean, I don't think he always threw them out, but I've got one. That was cool. Anyway, so I mean, here I am with Steve and Alan White. Do you know what I mean? I've had such a great day doing stuff for them. And I thought, right, I'm going to go and have a few drinks now. Well, I thought, I'll call in near Soho or somewhere. I didn't really know where I was going. I just remember being pissed in this pub, in this bar, and everyone was passing the tambourine around, and we were all like, yeah, really going for it, singing. And I had to make sure I got the last train home, and I was a bit tight for time, actually. And what I sometimes do is, well, I did, especially when I was drinking, I must say I didn't drink every day, and I didn't drink, like all day, every day. It was mainly because of my other business that I've got. I didn't get a lot of time to have a bit of a blowout, because I've got bars, you see, as well. So when I went out like that, I would have a big blowout day as well. Are you with me? While I'm in London, because where I am, quite a way away. And I saw the train, and I saw that it was getting tight, and it was the last one. So I just jumped on first class, and I thought, I'll jump on first class, and I just walked down and sorted it out later. I just wanted to get on the train. So I got on the train, and I've got this like tambourine in this bag, and I walked on the train, and I knocked this guy when I got on, and I said, "Oh, sorry." And really smart black guy, really smart clothes, really articulate, spoke really cool, really nice. And I said, "Oh, sorry." And he said, "Whose was that?" And I said, "Oh, it was Liam Gallagher's. Do you want to have a look at it?" "Oh, I met them a few times." He said, "So why don't you sit with me?" So I thought, "Oh, bloody hell. Okay." So I sat with him. I just felt drawn to talking to this chap. So I sat there, and I thought, I haven't got a bloody ticket for first class. So the guy came to check the tickets, and he said, "He's with me," in this sort of like deep kind of voice. And I thought, oh, fair enough. I mean, looking back, I don't know whether he'd paid for all the seats. I don't know. So he said, "What would you like to drink?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have a bottle of Bud. What you having?" He says, "Oh, I don't drink anymore." And he said, "Where are you going?" So I said, "Well, I'm getting off at Stoke." And he said, "Well, he goes to Manchester." So talking to him, and, he'd mentioned that he'd been in a couple of Bond films. So, you've got to think that my head is still in the Music Bank in London with Alan White and Steve White and tambourines and drum kits and guitars, which were Knowles, and all this, all this stuff's going on. So I just thought he was probably an extra or something. So I just carried on talking shit, and he told me that he'd met them at the premiere, and he was talking about loads of different stuff, and he was asking me about me, and it was all it was a quick train journey actually. And before I got off the train, he asked me to he said, "Are you on Twitter?" So I said, "Yeah," because obviously it was Twitter then. Well, it still is really, isn't it? But so anyway, so I forgot all about it, right? So I forgot all about this, and then in the morning I woke up quite hazy of the day, and I'd had a new follower. So I thought, who's this? Now, I don't watch a lot of TV, to be honest with you, and I don't watch a lot of films because I just can't keep still for all that kind of stuff. So you might know who he is, you might not know his name, but his name's Colin Salmon. So basically, I looked this guy up, and he's probably like one of the most kind of like prolific Black British actors, I would think, from our generation. So if we go back to the start, I think he was on Band of Gold. I can tell you right now, in EastEnders, he's in EastEnders. He's the guy who's got the Vic. But he was 008 twice with Brosnan, so he wasn't an extra. He had quite a big part of the casino table. I remember him now. He's been in I think Marvel or Fast and Furious, or he's been in some really cool films. And I had no idea who this guy was. So because of the tambourine, and he's still following me. He's in EastEnders, but he hasn't unfollowed me. So I met him, and it was funny actually because, well, I'll tell you something else happened where he got back in touch with me. But it's okay. So I've been selling stuff for Alan White at that time, and then a few television production companies had seen stuff I was selling, because a lot of this stuff I was, if I sell it, it's to collectors. It doesn't go on eBay for everybody to see, because like Alan said to me, it was annoying because he sold a lot of stuff, and people said, "Oh, he must be skint." Well, he's not skint. He's worth millions. So I was just selling stuff to fans discreetly. So there was a few things that caused a stir that I put on eBay, and a production company got in touch with me. It was a sort of a British version of a successful show in the States called Porn Stars, PAWN, and Porn Stars UK. So I was on that first, valuing a poem that was written by Mark Bolan. Then I got asked to be on a TV show on Channel 4 called Posh Porn. And they had these, it was like a pawnbroker shop, but you get like a wag going, "Oh, I used to go out this footballer and I haven't got really any money. I'm struggling to pay my rent, but he gave me this watch. What's it worth?" And then it turns out it's worth like 200 grand or something. Yeah. I don't think you've ever seen it before. So it was when it was hard for people to release money from their businesses and borrow money. So what they would do is they probably have millions of pounds worth of cars or something, and they'd take them to the shop, and they would release equity and that kind of thing. It was quite a successful TV show. So I was on there valuing a guitar that was signed by Oasis. This woman wanted 10 grand for it. Unfortunately, it wasn't even used by Noel, and it certainly wasn't worth that much. But I think that episode's still floating around. So a lot of things were going on. And then at that time, a lot of regional BBC radio, I got like a call The first one I got was, I think it was Hereford and Worcester. They rang me up. They said, "Oh, have you seen the Ringo Starr charity auction?" That was when Ringo put like his Beatles drum kit in and like loads of serious stuff in for charity. I said, "Yeah, I've seen it." And they said, "Could you talk about it?" And I said, "Yeah, when's this going to be?" And I went, "After the song." So I was like, "Oh, God." So then it was like, "Oh, Bananarama reforming. Can you tell us about the George Michael documentary? Can you tell us, do you think Oasis will reform?" And then all this, and then once you get on the BBC, like, expert listing or something, anything that happens, somebody's died, or like Meatloaf's died, or, you know, something's going on, like an anniversary of Woodstock, people were like coming to me, but it was more like I was getting known for being like the Britpop kind of guy. And then eventually my local BBC said that they didn't really have a lot of space for any new shows. And this is only a few years ago with what was been happening with the BBC regionally at the moment. But they gave me like a one-off 3-part show to present, which was crazy because I'd only ever been a guest before. And it was called the Britpop Revolution, which was quite cool. I didn't come up with the name. But the good thing was all the people that I met over the years, I could bring them on. So Alan McGee came up from London. I interviewed Sean Ryder, Baz Fratelli, Steve Craddock, Nigel from Dodgy. It was only a little 3-part show. I actually had more guests than I could actually fit on in the end. And it was just like a little one-off 1-hour show, and it was brilliant. So I did that. And then, of course, then I did BBC Breakfast. I was asked to go on and talk about CD sales, the decline in CD sales. And they said you'd be joined by Roetta, which, of course, luckily I've met her a few times before. And I messaged her. I said, "I'm on with you tomorrow." She went, yeah, I thought it was you. They said there'd be a Britpop expert on. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool." So that was really cool. She told me to shut up because I couldn't stop talking because I was so nervous. And she doesn't talk when she's nervous. She said, "Talk to me afterwards." That was brilliant. I was so nervous. And they said, "Don't talk about numbers. Don't talk about things." I suppose in case you get it wrong, isn't it? But I was there. It's on YouTube, actually. Yeah, well, you know, there's been a big 12 million records and this and that. I was giving it the full spiel, you know. And afterwards, the producer come over and he said, "You did ever so well. Do you know we get 9.5 million watchers, viewers in the morning?" And then I realised then that it's no good when the BBC rang me up to talk to say, "Oh, we're going to speak to music enthusiasts." I mean, it is so on rock and roll, isn't it? I thought, I've got to do something. I've got to write a book. I've got to do a book. It was basically a vanity project.
Right.
To be honest, the fact that, I mean, my spelling is terrible. I'm so unorganised. How I could ever do a kind of a small kind of book is beyond me, really. But, you know, I managed to get it sorted. But so I wanted them to ring me up and say, "Well, it's all from broadcaster," which sounds a bit better, doesn't it? I mean, I don't really mind what they call me, but I just thought music enthusiast was a bit shit. So I did the book. I did that. And then,
that book, sorry to cut you off, Rob, that book is Buying Into Britpop, right?
Yeah, so I did the book, Buying Into Britpop. So basically, it's like a book zine. It's kind of, I know a few clothes shops and hairdressers that have got them on the table because, I mean, it's kind of like a toilet book for lads, isn't it, really? It's kind of like, you know, this is Blur, this is what I say about them, this is a fact, this is a rare record, we're on to the next band. But what I found is there's been a lot of probably 20-year-olds or maybe 18, 19-year-olds that want to read this. I didn't think about this actually when I did the book, but they like it because it's kind of like a little fact-finding book for them. So I suppose if the mates ask them, "Oh, do you know much about Pulp?" "Oh, yeah," and they're like, you know, they can find out stuff quickly. But I found this is where I think the BBC missed a good trick really with Britpop, because if you think like Noel's 55 is he or something? 54. You're Clint Boom 64. You've got like, so if I liked the lottery winners and I'm like 35 or 40, can you imagine in another 20 years you're going to be 60, 70, aren't you? So when Oasis came out, people weren't necessarily 18, were they? It could have been 30 or 40 when they liked them. So when you look at the spectrum of Britpop, what it encompasses, because it was a movement of art, fashion, music, politics. It was the whole thing, wasn't it? I mean, this music appeals to a massive range of people, I think. So, you know, but anyway, so yeah, so I did the little book. And then around that time, I was spending more time with Alan. Obviously, I'd done sold some stuff for him and done that. And then he invited me to a few gigs. And then I said, "Do you fancy doing one of these Q&A things?" And he said, he was doing them at the time, but he said, yeah, let's give it a go. So I booked the British Music Experience in Liverpool, and we did one there. I mean, I wasn't really great at it, and I don't know if it's because it was difficult because being your friend and you don't really want to offend them or not sound as knowledgeable as you probably should be. I found them quite nerve-wracking, and it was a great experience. So we did a few more. Usual question was, who had the biggest cock? Was it Noel or Liam? I mean, what a thing to ask. Do you know what I mean? What a thing to ask. Usually they were kind of same stupid questions, really. But I mean, I was kind of nervous, to be honest with you, doing them. I don't know why. It was just quite daunting. The biggest one, I think, was I was asked to do the one at the O2 in Islington. I think it was the 25th anniversary for Definitely Maybe. Phil Smith, the Oasis tour DJ, he was there. And me and Alan had a chat. And there was a Oasis tribute band on. I remember before we went on, I said, how many is there? And he went, 500 people. And I looked at Alan, I was like, oh my God. It's kind of a big deal, especially it was so different in the O2 because you go to some of these little venues and everybody's listening and you could hear a pin drop, and it was like actually being in a band because it was so loud and shouting and stuff. But it was just a good thing to do, so I did that, and then I kind of fell into working with bands along the way because I think I was probably getting a little bit of exposure myself, and I suppose people thought, well, they couldn't get to Alan, but they could get to me. Do you know what I mean? So at a lot of venues, people were giving me their CDs or stuff saying, could you get Alan to have a listen to it? So, which I did. And there was a couple of bands that I found that he worked with or he liked, one he signed. And I thought, well, it was quite fun. It was quite fun managing bands, quite time consuming. And it does cost quite a lot of money as well, But I think if it's something that you want to do, it's great. You should go for it. But, unfortunately, I was kind of on a bit of a crest of a wave. I was doing quite well, and then lockdown came along and it really fucked everything up, to be honest with you, because, it was just something that obviously the world had never seen and the music industry hadn't seen. And it kind of sort of put the kibosh on that. So what I decided to do working from home was, I set up a little label, which was like a vehicle in a way, and it was to get bands exposure. I just put the singles out online, which at the time, I mean, even if you could have spent money, there was no point waiting for vinyls, was there, and all that kind of stuff with a delay on everything. So I was just doing one or two single deals. I wasn't really tying bands into anything. If I get them publishing, I would. And, to be honest with you, I enjoyed it. I loved sort of having a kind of a bit of a label on the go and helping bands. And it was fun. It was really fun because it's a thing I loved doing. And I felt like I had a kind of a purpose. And I thought, was this my kind of calling? It was great. It was hard work. And I don't know if bands always appreciate what you've done, and I think you can get a band out of nowhere, song played on Soccer AM, or get them publishing deal, or get them played on big stations. But then sometimes some of the bands are always looking for, well, what's happening next, and it's very hard. And at the time, you had Arla Parks putting out probably 4 different versions of the same song, like you had Sports Team, Arla Parks, you had Alfie Templeman, you had a lot of people, and they were just dropping songs more frequently, and there'd be the New York Loft Department, the Spanish guitar version, to get into all these different charts. And by that time, people were fed up with the kitchen gigs, weren't they? And I know a lot of big promoters were a bit finding it hard, and I know there was people that were using studios to do massive live streaming things, and it was. I think that's when I started to get a bit. I suppose I had a bit of depression, really, because you're in Notting Hill Arts Club and you've got bands going on, you've got things happening, you're meeting more people. Alan was introducing me to people. He invited me down to the film set for the creation film where I met, everybody on set there. And, you just feel like I basically felt there was a momentum from just collecting music memorabilia. Should I really be presenting on the BBC? Should I really be having a book, sending a book to the British Library? Am I good enough to be working with bands? I mean, the music industry is probably one of the only industries you can walk in with no real qualifications or checks, is there really? And I did doubt myself, but there was always something big was going on or happening. And then because when lockdown came, I think it really affected me quite badly. The only thing that happened was I messaged my editor for a regional newspaper and said, if you needed me to do anything, let me know. So they said, would you like to do a music column? Which it isn't a column, really. It's a full page. Whether that's just they call me a columnist because I'm not a music journalist, which is no problem at all. But that was great because then, of course, I was interviewing bands again, trying to help them. And then I was probably giving them information. And I mean, really, they probably benefited more than just the interview because I was, trying to help them, And then a local station also contacted me, offered me a kind of a new music show, which was 7 till 9, a 2-hour live show. That was challenging to start with because, I hadn't really had my own show before, and having guests coming in and doing live sessions, that was fun. But that really saved me, I think, the radio and the newspaper column, because then I felt like someone who thought they were going somewhere and it just looked like it had all gone wrong. I had a bit of a purpose where I could still promote bands and do what I like. And yeah, I got a bit of an ego boost, I mean, you would, wouldn't you? I mean, and I think sometimes you do need that, don't you? Because, bands want somebody quite confident and full of it, don't they? You want to be promoted by somebody that's well connected, got good social media followers and people in the industry and well-known band members and stuff. And, of course, as soon as I was putting them on my social media, they were getting more, not like loads of followers, but a few more followers, more traction on the Spotify artist page when I was playing the tracks out. And so that kind of was, I'd done a bit of a full circle, really. I sort of was then in a different kind of, I'd sort of gone from selling memorabilia then into writing about bands and presenting a show, pushing their music and interviewing them.
Yeah, and the show is currently available, right? So you've got a show on Islington Radio and you're also on the Hitmix. Yeah,
so the Hitmix Radio, it does well, the show. So they skimmed an hour off drive time, which is quite unusual, really. So to do a new music show from 6 till 9 on a Monday live, that's great. Because, if I need about 15 songs an hour, I'm championing quite a lot of bands, aren't I, from all over. And obviously, because now you can listen on the app, smart speaker online, it is actually on the radio as well. So it went to a 2-hour show to a 3-hour show. And then Islington Radio contacted me and asked me if I'd do a show there. And the good thing about that is it goes on Mixcloud, and it's been doing really well in the Mixcloud charts. It's been, I think the highest it went to was like number 2, but it gets into it breaks out into the shoegazing chart, pop chart, Britpop. And when I look at it, it's like, wow, this is great. But I mean, it's not going to get me on 6 Music, and I don't think it's going to get me on Radio X. But I do it because I love it. But there is times where you think you put a lot of effort in and you kind of do sort of wonder, where it's all going sometimes. And then I think when I start thinking that's when I start going a bit downhill with it all, because there's a lot, isn't it? Because you do a 3-hour show on a Monday, then I do one on a Thursday, and then I write for the paper on a Wednesday. And the Hitmix kindly offered me another show. I do one on Friday now, 8 till 10, called The Essential Classics, so I could play ska, mod, whatever really, just classic music that I like. So I'm pretty involved with music, I would say, although it's not really bringing me in a massive kind of an income, it's like a hobby, but I love doing it, and if I can help bands, then that's what it's about for me,
I think you can really tell you love it because you're so busy with it and putting so much into it. I think you can tell it's your passion and your devotion. So I recently saw you met Ian Brown on your Twitter, which must have been an incredible experience. And it seems like you've had some amazing experiences, Rob.
Well, yeah, just quickly. So at Ignition, so Noel Gallagher's management, they asked me a few years ago, they said, well, we're thinking of doing this exhibition in London. Could you value all the bands' memorabilia that's going into it? And it was called Chasing the Sun, and it was in Shoreditch. Funny little story, actually, because it was a day out again. and I wasn't working. I just valued everything for the exhibition, and I thought, I'm not going to charge any money for this because I'm going to see what's going to happen. And I got, obviously, would you like the VIP ticket to go? Of course, I was like bloody Willy Wonka, wasn't it? I couldn't wait to go because I wasn't sure if I was going to get to meet any of them or anything. So I went to a little pub next door, and I walked in, and I tell you what, you couldn't make this up. So I walked in, and I don't really know many people in London, and I walked in, and this guy went, Rob. I thought, what the fucking hell's that? It was Brian Cannon, because like Brian before, and he said, how you doing? I said, yeah, good. And he said, Bones over there, Bonehead. So, because obviously I've met Bonehead before, so I thought, bloody hell, this is great. So I'm having a drink with Bone, who's like a legend, you know, beyond anything, you know, I love him, you know, and Brian Cannon, of course. And they said, Paul's here. And I went, who's Paul? They went, Paul Gallagher. So I thought, all right, so my head's like this now, because I'm at the bar with these guys, and I'm thinking, this is fucking great. I've made it. So we're having a right laugh and stuff. I probably got on the nerves in the end. And then he said, right, we're off to see Liam. So I thought, yeah, cool. So I said, well, have a good one, lads. You know, and they went, no, come with us. I said, really? Okay. So no one could find him in any of these bars and restaurants. So I eventually found him, and they all went in. And I just remember Debbie saying, his partner, oh, come and sit next to me. So I was sitting next to her. And then I suppose it was, I can't remember. I think it was Bone, Paul and Liam. I can't remember. But I remember he bought me 3 porn star martinis, not in one go.
Yeah.
Throughout. And I had a few photographs. And we all toddled off to the exhibition. I remember seeing a photograph afterwards where he was mobbed, and I remember seeing it happen. He just took himself off to the DJ booth for a bit. So that was like interesting. Yeah. So I met a few people at the Happy Mondays. I've been lucky to meet Sean 3 or 4 times, and Bez a few times, and Roetta and stuff. But yeah, Ian Brown. Yeah. So it was funny actually, because I was speaking to a friend of mine, and they said you were probably gifted that because he's quite spiritual, isn't he, Ian Brown? And like, you know, sometimes in life, you know, these things happen, don't they? So I DJ actually as well with vinyl, and haven't really been doing it long. I think I started about 2018. I just walked into the Hard Rock Cafe in Manchester and said, did you need a DJ? That was my first DJ gig. They said, we'll pay you. They said, we'll give you as much food and drink as you want, which was disastrous really, but they had me back because they asked me to do the Liam Gallagher warm-up gig. So before the gig, so I did it again then, and I did Paul Smith across the road, and I did a few places. I DJ'd with Alan McGee a few times in Spain, and I did it this year with him as well, round and about sort of places. And I've got a residency now. Well, they haven't called it residency, but they asked me to do it every Saturday. I'm in the Northern Quarter in Manchester, dead cool place, dead cool bar called Disorder. It's like a Joy Division style theme bar. They've got Ian Curtis on the wall, and you know, it's just a dead cool bar. They asked me to do something there. They said, well, could you do some Britpop? So I got Nigel Clark from Dodgy to go down with me downstairs in the basement. He played, and I DJ'd afterwards. And then I got McGee's band, the Gulps, there. And then they've moved me up to the main bar. Now they've moved me in the window now with my jingle sticks like this, you know. So I'd gone, and 2 weeks ago I went and set up. Christmas market was open. So I thought, I'll go and have a look. It was bloody mayhem. So I thought, right, I've had enough of this. So I crossed the road and went down to Deansgate near Forsyths, took a right and thought, I'll go down here for a bit. I thought, actually, no, I'll go and get a coffee and go back. And as I turned around, Ian Brown was walking towards me. Now, usually you will find a lot of musicians that are at his caliber might duck their head down, walk off because they don't want the photo and they don't want to chat. And he was, I mean, you couldn't have wanted him to be any better. I mean, it was just incredible. So I just said, oh, hi, and said, sorry, I've wanted to meet you for years. Any chance I can grab a quick picture? And he said, yeah. He said, who are you? I said, I'm Rob Fiddaman. Hi, Rob Fiddaman. Nice to meet you. How you doing? I was like, yeah, great. I said, yeah. So he asked what I did. So I name dropped a few people just so he knew I wasn't completely bonkers, and told him what I do. And somebody with him took a photograph, and it was nighttime, and there was like this massive white glare, you know, over the photo, over us. So I said, oh, sorry, would you mind taking another one? So he was like, yeah. So they took about 8 of us, I think, and one of me talking to him actually was quite cool. And got talking to him, and I said, oh, I don't want to keep them, guys. And they went, no, it's okay, we've got a table booked down the road. And he said, it was nice meeting you, Rob Fiddaman. Now, my name's quite difficult to pronounce and remember. He made a point to shake my hand and say my name again. And I just said, I don't know why, I said, oh, you should come up to the Northern Quarter to Disorder, because I play all your stuff up there. It's like, what a stupid thing to say. But I don't know, it just like, he kind of put you at ease, actually, because, you know, I mean, he is the man, isn't he, you know? Ian Brown, isn't it, you know?
Absolute dude.
He couldn't have been any better.
That's great. That's fantastic. So, is there anything you're listening to at the moment, Rob? You mentioned you do a new music show. What would you recommend at the moment, and who are you listening to?
Oh, actually, The Farm got a new EP out called Feel the Love, and I played it quite a lot on my show, and I couldn't really work out why it wasn't getting more play. Anyway, I kept playing it and tagging them in. I suppose like a radio plug, really, but I didn't really know I was doing it. And then I noticed it started getting on the C list on BBC Two, and it started making its way up. And they very kindly messaged me and said that without me sort of playing them, it might not, you know, wouldn't have happened. I mean, they were so thankful. But it's a brilliant song and a fucking great band. But that's obviously one of the heritage bands, of course. The Kairos, I think they're from Liverpool. Quayside, they're from Liverpool. They're pretty good. The Gulps, I like the Gulps. I mean, you've got so many of the Snuts. I like them. I mean, you've got so many. It's difficult because a lot of these bands, they're sort of they seem to do well, don't they? And then they're on the surface, but they don't seem to kind of break through. There's a lot of bands, isn't there, that you know, they've sort of don't have a manager, don't have a label, and they've done well, but it's keeping that momentum up, isn't it? That's the only trouble, I think, is keeping that momentum up. I mean, there's some bands that they seem popular, but it's difficult, isn't it? You've got to keep having those songs, haven't you, all the time, you know? I don't know, really. There's just so many bands. I'll probably think afterwards, oh, I should have said. There's lots of people from Stoke-on-Trent as well, which are getting national radio play, like Lissy Taylor and Darla Jade. You've got there's just so many bands.
There is.
I just can't remember.
There is. You can never have too many bands. You mentioned some great acts there. Lizzie Taylor is fantastic. I saw the Gulps about 2 years ago support Cast. They were great. Full Cast were great, and so were the Gulps, actually, to be fair to the Gulps. So, Rob, I always like to...
Really, the thing about the Gulps is there isn't really any ego with them. Now, I know they're Spanish, and there's a bit of a mixture of where they're all from and stuff, but they're so nice. Do you know what I mean? They're just fun. They're kind of like, if they really made it and had a massive video, that you'd want to see a cartoon video. They're just, I don't know have you ever seen the one they did for Honey Sugar Sugar, You're My Candy Girl? They did a little Flintstone style video for that song. But they need to be like cartoon characters because they're so cool looking, cute, cool looking guys. You just want to cuddle them. They're lovely guys. They're too nice for rock and roll. Do you know what I mean? That's what I like about them. Some of these bands, you know, they're trying to be like Kasabian. They're trying to be like Oasis, and you just listen to the first few seconds, and you're like, oh God, you know, it's like there's a lot of it. There's nothing new, is there? I like bands. Just like things that are a bit different. I like quirky stuff, you know.
Absolutely. So, Rob, this podcast is all about you collating your fantasy festival. Are you a big festival fan? Have you been to many festivals?
Well, strangely enough, not as many as I probably should have done, because unfortunately with having like businesses and doing stuff like I do, it's like I get invited to lots of gigs and I'm either DJing or I'm working. So it is difficult, actually. People probably quite surprised. I mean, I haven't been to hardly many this year at all, to be honest with you, which is a shame. Oh, Millie Mountain from London. She's brilliant. Definitely check her out, Millie Mountain.
Oh, another one to add.
She's
yeah.
Real cool cat. She's really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
No. I suppose my all-time favourite was Nebworth, really. And seeing everybody so bloody smashed out their head, knowing that they'd never get to see the Oasis play, you know.
So let me ask you a question about Nebworth. It was obviously 2 days. What day did you go? Because I was there on the Saturday, and sometimes I feel like I hit the right day, and other days I'm like, actually, the Sunday at that point in my life might have been a better one for me, although both days were amazing. What day did you go, Rob?
I was there on the Sunday, Kula Shaker. I've been playing new music from them, actually. Indian Record Player, that's a new one. Kula Shaker were great. Mannix, wasn't it? Bootleg Beatles.
You had Cast and the Charlatans on your day.
Yeah, great on his own, actually. He's brilliant. He's so good. It was a real kind of awakening, because that was my first, I was very young as well, but that was my first festival. Well, actually, I drove in my little Fiat Punto and drove back, so I hadn't drank or anything. But I can remember that's good.
Great time to be alive. Great time to be alive. So, like I said, at the top of the pod, this is all about getting Rob to collate his fantasy festival. So Rob gets to choose any 5 acts, one of whom must play one of their studio albums in full. And Rob gets to pick an encore, which all 5 acts will perform together at the end of his Fantastival. So that can be a song by anyone that all 5 of his acts play. So very simple, 5 acts, 5 time slots. Like I mentioned at the beginning in the pod, I had Stephen Brown on last week. He created his Strangest Sounds from the Underground Fantasy Festival last week. In his opening slot, he had XTC. In his super second slot, he picked the English Beat. In his Midway Madness slot, he picked the Chameleons. Pre-headline acts, he went for Bauhaus. And for his headliners, he picked the Jam. And for his encore, he had all 5 of his acts come together to play Going Underground. So for any first-time listeners, it's a very easy concept, very enjoyable as well. But Rob, before you collate your fantasy festival, you have to give your festival a name and you have to give it a venue. So Rob, what are you going to call your fantasy festival?
Well, I'm a bit chaotic, so I kind of thought Carnage would be good, but then I realised that it would be nice to have it in a kind of a forest or something. So I thought rather than tents, it could be something like Treehouse Festival, and you all have like little tree houses where you sit in and just long out and watch it, So it could be anywhere in a nice forest, depending, Scotland or Thetford in Norfolk, or there's lots of different, no specific forest really, but I thought the treehouse forest might be different.
I like it. Let's get rid of the tents. Let's get the tree houses up. All right, the Treehouse Festival, it could be anywhere in a nice forest, and I'm sure it will be. We'll make the weather nice, so it's not too wet and rainy in the tree houses. So Rob, you only get 5 acts, mate. 2:00, time for your opening act. So who's going to open the Treehouse Festival?
I thought just to open up the Treehouse Festival with a decent kind of groove, we could have the Rolling Stones to open up.
We could certainly do that. So, I mean, the Stones, mate, you can have, there's so many different eras for the Stones and so many different tracks. Is there a particular era of Stones you want, or any particular track you would want to hear?
It was a bit bluesy, wasn't it, with Brian Jones? But no, I don't mind. I had no particular kind of era so I just love them, I love a lot of the 60s bands. I just like them from the 60s period, but I think with the Stones, it's all just rock and roll.
It certainly is, mate. It certainly is. Right, the Stones are your opening act. This is only the 5th time they've been picked, actually, which isn't that many, considering this is the 149th episode. So the Stones are your opening act. They're going to give us an hour. So first time they've been picked.
Nice crowd pleaser for people, Rolling Stones. And then I thought, as people are sort of starting to get in the mood a bit, we could sort of trick them a bit and get Jimi Hendrix on.
Great shout. You can certainly do that. So Hendrix to follow the Stones?
Yeah.
Is he would you say he's one of your favourite guitarists then?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not massively into him, but obviously you just couldn't get, who else could you have really to follow the Stones? What a guitarist. And the stage presence, of course. It is tough. There's a lot of people that I'd like to put in, but I think the Hendrix would be a good one.
All right.
Because I'm thinking as a DJ as well, like what would follow? How could I mix it up? How could I shake it up a bit? Just keep people on their edge of the seat, in the treehouse.
Absolutely.
And then Jimi Hendrix just to push it up a little bit,
All right, great show. Hendrix is playing from 3:30 to 4:30. We're going to take a half-hour break. That takes us to 5:00. It'll be time for your Midway Madness slot then, Rob. Who are you going to have follow Jimi Hendrix?
Well, I thought, because the Treehouse Festival would be like in a forest, okay, so not as commercial. If you think back to like Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood with the Sex Pistols, after they caused complete chaos on the BBC, concerts and gigs being cancelled everywhere, Vivian Westwood and Malcolm McLaren had to put up little pop-up shows. So I thought, well, who else could complement this better than being followed now by the Sex Pistols?
Great shout. All right, Sex Pistols. Unbelievably, only the second time the Sex Pistols have been picked for Fantasy Festival. So it's only you and Steve Firth, who is the bass player from Embrace, have ever picked the Sex Pistols. So lovely stuff. Very cool. So they're gonna bring the rock and roll to it. So they're gonna be your Midway Madness act. They'll play from 5 till 6.
We're going to change it now. We're going to really change the vibe now. We're going to have Amy Winehouse.
Great shout. So Amy Winehouse, your pre-headliner. I mean, I guess Amy Winehouse, one of your favourite acts of all time?
I just think that we should probably have put her on earlier, because I'm not sure what state she'd have been in by then. But we're going to go for Crazy Amy. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's someone I would have loved to have met. I really would. I'm lucky to have some really nice personal memorabilia of hers, actually. I've got some of her items, which is just nice to have. But yeah, absolutely love her. I wish I wrote Love Is a Losing Game. What a tune. What an absolute song. Absolutely love her, yeah.
Yeah, absolute legend. All right, so Amy Winehouse is your pre-headliner. So we've had the Stones, we've had Jimi Hendrix, we've had the Sex Pistols. Amy Winehouse has played from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. We'll take a 1.5 hour break, and it'll be time for your headline act. So we're going to get 2.5 hours to play. So Rob, who is going to headline the Treehouse Festival?
Well, this was difficult because we've had comebacks from Blur and we've had comebacks from Pulp, as of ABBA as well, with the Avatars. And as Jarvis Cocker recently said on stage, this is me, not an avatar. This is Jarvis Cocker. This is really me. What a cool introduction, to go on stage with. So they've had their limelights, and really, I got to say Oasis, unfortunately. I just, it's got to be Oasis. Bit cliche, probably. But I have them. I mean, I could have put John Lennon. I could have put Liam Gallagher, but I think I'm just going to blow out and put Oasis.
All right, so Oasis are your headline acts. 15th time they've been picked, so they are getting picked a fair bit lately on the podcast, but that's what it's all about. I always ask this when people pick Oasis. What version of Oasis are you having? Who's your lineup? Because I almost feel like they're two different bands at a midway point with Oasis. So who is your Oasis lineup going to be? Remember, it's the fantasy element, so you can mix and match if you would want to.
Well, I mean, to me, it was with Alan White, but I don't think Defo maybe would have been the same without Tony McCarroll. So I think we'll do it with the original first lineup, and I think the album that they would have to play in their entirety would have to be Definitely Maybe, of course.
Classic album. I remember buying that album on cassette in H&V in the store that I would work in a mere 4 years later as a young man. So Rob, obviously this isn't a visual podcast. Behind you there is, and we looked at this before, you've got a signed disc from Alan McGee, a gold disc behind you, which looks amazing.
Yeah, it was presented to Alan McGee for 100,000 unit sales for Definitely Maybe. So, and he signed it to me, which is kind of cool. So I'll be keeping that one. So yeah. I've been lucky years. I had some interesting Oasis memorabilia. I've still got a snare drum and some cymbals and bits and bobs, tambourines and interesting artifacts, But you can't keep everything. So I've sold a lot of the stuff that I bought to sell, if that makes sense, and kept the stuff I've been given.
Yeah, absolutely, makes perfect sense. But yeah, you got an amazing artifact behind you as we record this. All right, so like we said, Oasis are your headliners, and then at 11 o'clock they're going to bring out Amy Winehouse on stage, the Sex Pistols, Jimi Hendrix, and the Stones. I mean, you've got a hell of a lineup on your stage waiting to play. They get to play one more song, Rob, and it's any song of your choice by anyone ever. What would you have them to play to close the Treehouse Festival?
Well, I'm picking this song because I should imagine it's been picked quite a few times, and it's probably not anything different to what people have picked, but I just would like to imagine Jimi Hendrix doing a solo on My Generation by The Who.
Great track, and one Oasis will know how to play, because I'm sure Oasis played that more than their fair share of times.
They did do that one.
Great shout. All right, so let's lock your fantasy festival in. We've got the Treehouse Festival taking place anywhere in a nice forest. Opening act, we've got the Rolling Stones. Super Seconds, we've got Jimi Hendrix. Midway Madness, we've got Sex Pistols. Pre-headliners, we've got Amy Winehouse. And headlining your fantasy festival are Oasis. who are going to play Definitely Maybe in full and more. And for your encore, they're all going to play My Generation. Rob, sounds like an amazing fantasy festival to me. You happy to lock that one into the Fantastival Vaults?
Yes, I am, yeah.
All right, brilliant stuff. So I guess before we wrap this one up, Rob, what does the future hold for you? So you mentioned the radio show and the writing and the DJ. And what next couple of months hold for Rob Fiddaman?
Well, I'd like to carry on continuing to champion new music. I don't know whether I'll move on to a big station. Probably not. I've been asked if I would go into radio plugging and plug bands. I'd like to probably do some kind of event. I don't know. Maybe see if I can get my book into some more outlets or do another one. I don't know. Maybe I need to do a book. I'm not famous enough to do a book signing, so I'd have to do a DJ set and a book thing, wouldn't I? I don't know what I'd do there, but maybe it'd be nice to do something in a music shop where there's a coming together of the Britpop, and there's a few, like you say, Shed 7, if they've got a new album coming out and it gets to number one, and I suppose I could be there in the background with doing some DJing with my vinyl, and maybe have a very small exhibition, like a few little bits and bobs of mine that I've got over the years on display, and sign a few books. That might be cool. Don't know. But I don't know. I think the most important thing is never say no. There's lots of things I was very nervous about doing. And I said yes and worried about it when I had to do it. But I don't know what's going to happen. It's a new year. I'm feeling mentally better than ever. I look better than ever. And I think just taking all the opportunities that come across, really.
So you mentioned the book, Rob. So if anyone's listening to this podcast goes, yeah, I fancy a bit of that, plug it for us then. So what's it called? How much is it? Where can people buy it? Where should people head to if they want to buy it? In the shop or online, or where do people go?
Okay, so it's called Buying Into Britpop. It's a paperback book zine. It's available in a few independent record shops around Manchester, but it's in HMV, which I'm really proud about, in Hanley in the shopping centre in Stoke-on-Trent. So you can go and pick one up off the shelf right next to What's the Story, Definitely Maybe, which was dead cool. I've got a picture on my Instagram. I was dead proud of that. If it does well, it might get into another one. It'd be dead cool. If I could get it into Manchester next year, that would be my dream, just to get a few copies in there. But so you can get it there. I think it's on eBay. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter, Rob_Fiddaman. Hit me up with a DM. I can sign one and get one off to you. But if you're near HMV in Stoke, definitely call in. And obviously they've got a great range of other music books as well, which I'm proud to be against. So yeah.
Brilliant. So go and order the book. Rob's mentioned his Insta and Twitter handles. And like you said, Rob, your weekly show, Monday, 6 till 9. People can go and listen to that.
Hitmix Radio, 6 till 9. 107.5 local radio, though you can pick it up in Manchester. It's on Alexa and smart speaker. Wednesday, my column is in the Sentinel, which covers North Staffordshire and South Cheshire. So if you're in a band around that area or you come into the area, I can interview you. Thursday, I'm on Islington Radio. And Friday, I'm on the Hitmix again for the Essential Classics, which is, I had to think about this, actually, 8 till 10. So, yeah. And DJing in the Northern Quarter in Manchester in Disorder. You see me in the window with my jingle sticks and tambourine going mad with my vinyl. And that's Saturdays from about 7:30 to 12:30. So, yeah.
Great stuff. So that is it, everyone. Thank you for listening to the 149th episode of the Fantastival Podcast. And if you've enjoyed this one, please subscribe. You can give the Fantastival Podcast a review on iTunes, or you can follow the show on Spotify. You can also rate the show on Spotify. You can also comment on the episode as well on Spotify. So if you're listening on that platform, please make sure to do so. Rob is on Twitter, so is the podcast. So if you don't follow us, make sure you do. And we can be found at Fantastival P. And if you can't follow us on Twitter, or you're not on Twitter, give us an email at fantastivalpodcast@outlook.com. Unfortunately, we don't play music on this podcast, but I'll get some tracks from Rob. We'll make a nice little Spotify playlist in the episode description. So if you're on your mobile device, scroll down and you'll see a nice little playlist link there, and we'll get some tracks on there for you. So Rob, I know you're a very great presenter, but you've been the guest on this one. How have you found coming on the podcast and being a guest and talking about yourself? Because I'm quite aware it's very different from being a host to a guest. How have you found it, mate?
Yeah, it's been very good talking to you. You made me feel very comfortable. I've tried not to talk too much. There's probably lots of things I've forgotten about, like being interviewed for Fred Perry Subculture and doing a playlist for them. That was good fun. But yes, this has been. I've done a few podcasts before, but I really enjoyed this one. And thank you for inviting me. And You've been a great host, and yeah, it is difficult because like I'm trying not to talk too much and keep it a bit to the point. But I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me on and being on the last one of the year. It's supersonic. You know?
It is. Now go and have your gin and tonic. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be back next week with the Christmas special end of year finale. That'll be episode number 150. So please make sure to join me. But until then, stay safe, my Fantastival friends. Please continue to spread the word. And that word is Fantastival. Thanks for listening.